Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. So a few months ago, just before the release of Phoenix 2, I was invited out to spend the day at Ilford's factory here in England, where I got a behind-the-scenes tour and was able to see what goes into making some of my favorite film stocks. But beyond the excitement of getting to spend the day at one of the biggest film manufacturers in the world's factory, I was also really interested just to know what the last 5 to 10 years has looked like for them with this kind of resurgence of interest in film, and also get their take on the health of the industry and what the future holds in store. So today I'm going to share all this with you, including this look inside the factory, and then also a discussion with Ilford about the future of film. So the day began with a tour of the factory where we were shown how a roll of film is made from start to finish. And unfortunately, not all of the processes were in action during our visit, but we were still taken around to the different workstations and things were explained to us. And that's what we're going to start with. So the first step of the process is by actually making the emulsion. And Ilford, of course, does this in-house. And photographic emulsion is essentially a combination of gelatin and silver halide crystals. We were shown samples of this when we were on the tour, which basically just looked like big chunks of white gelatin. And the silver halide crystals in the emulsion can vary in size just depending on the specific film it's being used for. And the size of them dictates, obviously, the speed of the film and then the grain structure as well. And Ilford actually begins this process right at the start by growing their own crystals in-house. And we were told right now they're making emulsion 3 days a week, and each run of this can produce anywhere from 350 kilograms up to a ton per batch. And then once this is made, it's stored in packages and labeled in this chilled warehouse where it waits to be selected for the actual coating process. So next up is the actual coating process, and these specific coating machines are up to 500 meters in length. So these can span almost the entire factory, and they have 4 lines right now with these machines, and then a 5th that they just converted for their new color films that they're making as well. And how this process works is they take that emulsion they just made, those packages, they put it into a big hopper for a specific film. It gets melted down and then it gets coated over top of the film base using what they call their cascade coating technology.
We coat anywhere from about 30 meters a minute up to about 110 meters a minute. It's ranged to 150, but we've never been driven that far. We coat triacetate and polyester for our film products, resin coated and fiber-based paper products. And we did inkjet on here as well, and now colour.
And the coating machine room itself is in total darkness. It does have people working in there who monitor it, but there's also a control room as well where it's monitored, where people sit at a desk and there's infrared cameras set up so they can see the process in action while it's happening. And then after the film's been coated, it's run over a set of chilled rollers, which helps set the emulsion, and then it's run through a dryer, and after that it's sent off to quality control. Obviously, it's important to check the film that's being made for defects, and we were told they do this with every single roll they make, and the very first check they do is to take the start and finish of each roll and see if there are any defects.
This is Kentmere 400 film. That's the standard white light sample before it's processed. This is a process strip where we have 2 different densities. Any defects that may be dark we'll find in the light strip, any defects that may be light we'll find in the dark strip. So this is the first inspection that we make. 2 days later there will be a secondary inspection when we're not here, and then if everything's happy, then will be samples to quality services where they'll do sensitometry, speeds, everything like that. And then there'll be a third quality inspection in finishing before the roll's finished into the cans.
And then after the film's been coated and the QC is done, they take these giant rolls of film that have been made and they load them into what they call coffins, which are basically just these giant light tight metal containers. And the purpose of these is so they can go and transport these rolls of film to the next area. So next up before the actual film is taken and spooled is to make the cassettes, and this is obviously specific for the 35mm process, as 120 is a little bit simpler. And again, they do this all in-house, starting out with one gigantic sheet of uncut branded cassette material. And this is actually a fairly complex process where these sheets are cut into strips and then have velvet attached to the side, and then a guillotine cuts them into individual cassettes from there, and then they're formed into shape and a spool and an end cap are put in. So next up is to take the film that's been made and start spooling it for 35mm and 120. And how they do this is they take those master rolls of film they've made and they slit them down into different pancakes depending on the size of the film. And then they load those pancakes, which are essentially kind of master cut rolls of film, into these magazines or these cartridges, which are light tight. And then from there, a machine operator can go grab one of these specific cartridges, depending on what they're spooling, load that onto the machine, and the film gets fed out of there onto the different rolls. And I got to see this in action for 120, where some HP5 was being spooled, and this was done on a machine where the film is fed out of the magazine, attached to a backing paper, spooled, and eventually labeled. And for 35mm, they use a different line, a little bit more of a complex process where the magazine is loaded, the film's fed into a different machine, perforations are made on the rolls, and then the film is run through a machine where it is signed with information, and then it can be spooled into the cassettes from there, and then eventually put into the plastic tub, where it'll then be sent to packing. So again, a fairly complex and detailed process with a lot of different machines just to get the film spooled into cassettes and onto rolls that we're used to seeing when we buy our film as consumers. So next up is packing the actual film. And again, just like with spooling, some pretty complex machinery here, simply to take the packing materials and the spooled film, build the boxes, and pack them at a fairly high rate. Okay, so that wraps up the film kind of process part of the video. Next up, we're going to jump into a discussion with Ilford's marketing manager about kind of the current state and future of film. But before we do that, just have to quickly talk about the sponsor today, which is Squarespace. So I've been using Squarespace for a number of years now, and it's been the perfect platform to be able to build a professional looking website that's easily updated and can also grow with my business. For people like me with very limited web building experience, they have a ton of helpful tools, things like their blueprint builder, which will help you create a fully custom website from scratch in just a matter of minutes, or you can also choose from one of their wide range of award-winning templates to get started. But for me though, the biggest thing is just how intuitive and straightforward it is to use. So whenever I want to update my site or add something new, Squarespace makes the process very easy. They have things like their block feature where you simply click and drag in new sections. This is what I use to create a page for my short films. New galleries are also easy to make and to update. They also have more in-depth tools like their store feature, which is what I used recently to start selling my prints online. So check out squarespace.com today, sign up for a free trial, test it out. When you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Like I said at the start, I was really curious to sit down with them and just ask them what the last 5 to 10 years has been like. Obviously, as one of the bigger manufacturers, they went through this dip and now films in this kind of resurgence and has only been going up. And I wanted to know kind of what that's looked like for them.
We were quite uniquely positioned in some ways. While colour dropped off a cliff, because that's what everyone used when digital came along, black and white remained fairly healthy. It was used in college, in education, fine art. So we actually managed to weather the storm a little bit better than most, so that we were still fairly stable when the resurgence started up again. Roughly 5 years ago, there was a period where I think Kodak were having some trouble manufacturing, and we just hit basically a huge amount of growth during that period, which led us to invest quite significantly in the factory. So we've just, as you've seen today, in the process of finishing off some multi-million-pound investment in basically research and development, but also in a lot of our operational aspects. So our finishing capabilities, our cassette making units, all of that sort of thing. We're seeing people picking up printing again, people developing at home. We're seeing new labs cropping up, new cameras. The Pentax camera is a great indication of how healthy the market is. New films, like you said. So a lot of this sort of stuff is a good indication of a healthy market.
So it was really nice to hear about Ilford's kind of investment into their factory and their processes, but also just their kind of commitment to bringing new products to market, moving forward, investing in things like R&D. And obviously the big one has been Phoenix, and we're on to Phoenix version 2 as of this video, but at the end of 2023 is when we saw the first version of Phoenix. And I think this caught a lot of us off guard, Ilford releasing a color film. So I was really curious to know, like, where did this idea come from? How did it start? And what are their plans for it moving forward?
The concept behind Phoenix was, first of all, can we make it? So the original Phoenix that we launched in December 23. So it was a proof of concept, can we make a colour film in a factory that's only ever made black and white? Phoenix was the first iteration, and we knew it wasn't perfect, but it was a starting point. So we know the original Phoenix was tricky to shoot. We know it was high contrast, a lot of grain. So these are the things that we took back to our research and development team and said, look, this is the feedback, this is what people want from the next iteration or next colour film that we produce. So they basically looked at all the different layers, the different dyes, the different couplers, all the different components that go into every single layer and every basically part of that construct. And they pulled them apart and rebuilt them. So Phoenix 2 is a completely new film. It is new dyes, new couplers, a new layer construct to get to where we got. And I think Phoenix 2 is still experimental, but it's a bit more normal, if that makes sense. So I would love for us to still have experimental films that challenge people, that excite people, that are a bit different, but at the same time also have something that can, you know, challenge a Kodak Gold or a Colour Plus that people will be putting in their camera bags and shooting, you know, on holiday or walking around the streets. So we don't want to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into either place, but having something that gives film photographers choice is really where I want to be. I think the kind of shorter term roadmap will include things like anti-halation. I think we were close, but we weren't quite there. We need to fine tune that, but I would imagine the next version will have some form of anti-halation. Beyond that, you have to watch this space, I think.
But of course, Ilford's bread and butter has always been their black and white stuff, and they have a fairly extensive and varied lineup already of films and papers and developers. But I still had to ask, you know, what we can expect to see moving forward on that side of things. And then also, as a large format shooter, had to ask if there's the potential for any new sheet films in the future.
So in terms of new black and white products, we have just launched Kentmere 200. So Kentmere is our, let's say, more affordable value range. I think, you know, they're made through the same high quality processes that any Ilford film is made. And I think they're probably the best value films out there on the market. In terms of black and white films in general, we now have 12. That makes it our 12th film, 3 Kentmere, 9 Ilford. So we cover most of the different characteristics that you can get from a black and white film. And sheet film, we've got 4 different sheet films. So that is something that we have looked at to see if we can start introducing some of our other emulsions as sheet film. We get asked all the time for Pan F. We've been asked for SFX, Delta 3200. So all of these other films people want. So we just need to see if we can do it in a cost-effective way. We don't want to bring products to market that price people out of being able to afford it. So we have to do it in a way that we can do it cost-effectively, essentially. So that's always a challenge to do that, where it's potentially a bit more niche than something else. So black and white is something that is, you know, still very important to us, but a lot of our research and development is going into colour. You know, it requires that extra level of investment and energy and knowledge and learning to really help us progress at the speed we want to progress. So, you know, black and white is still key, but colour, I guess, is where the roadmap is focused on.
So I got to say, after doing this tour and getting to sit down with Matt and talk with him, you know, I left feeling very confident about things moving forward, specifically, you know, with the future of Ilford, just seeing the commitment they've put into their processes and the factory and the R&D and things like that. But I did want to ask Matt, as the last question, just what he thinks are some of the challenges for kind of the future of film moving forward.
To keeping film alive and kicking, I think there's many. You know, we are very keen to make high quality products, but at a price that, you know, people can afford. And that is always going to be a challenge. You know, we've seen over the recent years energy costs going through the roof. Silver's an incredible high at the moment in terms of costs. But it's not just that element of it. There's so many different components that go into a film, lots of raw materials. Occasionally we get notification that one of those raw materials has to change. But our research and development team, in addition to making new products, part of their role is making sure that we can swap out that chemical component, for example, with a different one, yet you as a customer will not notice any difference in your HP5 or your FP4. And that's key, making sure that these products are around for a long, long time. And what you shot 10 years ago is exactly the same as what you're shooting 10 years from now. We all want people to be out there using film, shooting film, enjoying using film. And this is the whole point of it. We want to make high quality products that people are proud to use, that they want to put in their camera. That's the goal. It's something that if you speak to anyone in that factory, that's what they want.
All right, so that's going to wrap this one up, and I hope you enjoyed this look inside the Ilford/Harman factory and this discussion about kind of the current state and future of film as well. And yeah, other than that, just want to say, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.